Yang ji jimbur zirdan nimi zhang zone munum jimbur nga gyata bakar tarngan zanto shirmar to. Tumba tikje jan la ki sham tsar mechan rawar seringi zhang kamsa jawar tikji shan la yi larma. Jime panzo jala sara de gongje topan pawar shinji lo, gongje topan pawar shinji lo, gongje topan pawar shinji.
Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we can hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate sentient beings, please generate bodhicitta before today's teaching. Teaching the Sutra of Great Liberation. In the Sutra of Great Liberation, we previously covered paying homage to the Buddhas of the past. Tomorrow, there's no class. The day after tomorrow, we should have one. Paying homage to the Buddhas of the past, paying homage to the Buddhas of the present, paying homage to the Buddhas of the future. We've completed this section. Today, we begin with paying homage to the Dharma jewel. Then we'll cover paying homage to the various bodhisattvas. I believe there are 299 bodhisattvas, if I remember correctly, just one short of 300. That's what I recall. But when we compare the texts, there might be some individual differences in the count. We'll see when we get there. So now we're at the point where we finished the Buddha jewel, and now we begin with the Dharma jewel. As for the Dharma jewel, it mainly refers to the 12 divisions of the teachings. Then we'll discuss the Sangha jewel, the Mahayana Bodhisattvas. When we recite the Sutra of Great Liberation, we're actually paying homage to the three jewels. Later on, there are also verses like Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. There are also some concluding verses of homage. Now we begin with the Dharma jewel. Regarding the Dharma jewel, in the Tibetan version, each of the 12 divisions has its own homage. Each division has its homage at the end, but in the Chinese version, only Namo is added at the beginning, not at the end. Actually, we know it should be added to each one. The meaning is implied, though the text doesn't show it, that's fine. Here it says, Namo to the great Dharan of total retention. This great Dharan of total retention actually represents the Tantras. This means that whether it's the outer Tantras, inner Tantras, or secret Tantras, we should pay homage to all the Tantric divisions. Namo to the great Dharan of total retention. This is the meaning. It means Namo to the 12 divisions of the teachings. Actually, in the great master Longchenpa's The Wish-Fulfilling Treasury, it also says the first turning of the Dharma wheel is called the Wheel of the Four Noble Truths. The second turning is called the Wheel of Signlessness. And the third turning is called the Wheel of Discernment, or the Wheel of Excellent Discernment. Actually, the third turning discusses Buddha nature. As we all know, the luminosity aspect of Buddha nature is mainly taught in the second turning as the emptiness aspect. The first turning mainly teaches the Dharma for ordinary beings, the four truths, the 12 links of dependent origination, and so forth. Now, these 12 divisions of teachings actually include all the sutras from the three turnings of the Dharma wheel. They can all be included, except some portions are Hanayana sutras and some are Mahayana sutras. As for the Vajrayana sutras, they belong to the great Dharan of secret mantras we just mentioned. So what are these 12 divisions of teachings? We'll discuss them below. A few years ago, we just finished covering them in the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras, and they were also mentioned in the Lotus Sutra. So for everyone here, this should be relatively familiar. The Sanskrit terms used here, the Sanskrit term is sutra. Sutra in Chinese is called contract scripture. It refers to those prose sections. In each sutra we have, including the Lotus Sutra and the Vimalakarti Sutra, there are sections of prose in the middle, including in the Avatamsaka Sutra. The style of prose, or this type of scripture, all belong to the category of contract scriptures. Like the Hanayana Ekotara Agama and the Durgagama, all have this form. This is called the contract scripture, the first one. The second is called Geya, which in Chinese is repeated verses. Repeated verses, this is the meaning. First it's explained in prose, then later some parts are in verse form. Like the Shargalavada Sutra I taught you before, many parts first use prose, then verses. In the Lotus Sutra, most of it also uses prose followed by verses. Including our Tibetan epic of King Geza, many parts are like this too. Especially in India, among the common people, I heard many novels are also like this. First using prose, then later to display literary talent, they use verse form, expressing it through poetry. This is called repeated verses. taking what was said and presenting it again in verse form. This is the second one. The third is called Vyakarana, or prophecy. Vyakarana in Sanskrit. In many sutras, prophecies are given about future Buddha names, prophecies for Pratyeka Buddhas, and even for some ordinary beings. After so many countless eons, you will become such and such a being. These are all Buddha's prophecies, like in the Lotus Sutra. The prophecies given to 500 disciples, and in other sutras, including the Mahabhair Sutra and the Lankavatara Sutra, there are prophecies for these bodhisattvas and great masters. This is called the prophecy scripture. The fourth is called Gatha. We often call it verses for chanting. It appears completely in verse form, like the Dhammapada and the chapter on causes and conditions. I believe it's called the Dharma Collection Sutra. These are all entirely in verse form, like the praise of Sangha merit we translated the other day. All of these appear entirely in verse form with no prose sections. Then Udana, called self-inspired utterances. The Buddha, without being requested by any disciple, spontaneously proclaims these teachings, like the Amitabha Sutra and our Prajaparamita Samkhayagata Choi in many sutras. The Buddha directly proclaims them himself. Then Nidana, the causation scriptures, like the Karma Shataka, which continuously explains causes and effects from beginning to end, what it was like in the past, what it's like now, the causal relationships of the present and how they connect to the past, and so forth. Then Avadana, the parable scriptures. In Buddhist sutras, there are also the parable sutras and the 100 Parable Sutra, which use analogies to expound the inner meaning of the teachings. Then Itivrataka, which means accounts of past events, the causal circumstances of the Buddha's disciples in their past lives, including Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, stories from when they were on the causal ground. Then Jataka, the so-called birth stories, stories of the Buddha's past lives, like in the Karuna Pundarka Sutra. There are many stories quoted in the extensive biography of the Buddha as well. And in the Buddha's acts and deeds, there are also stories of the Buddha's causal ground. Then Vaipulya, which means extensive, the Mahayana Vaipulya Sutras. This mainly refers to all the Mahayana sutras, the scriptures that don't exist in the Hinayana. For example, the Great Bodhisattva Collection Sutra and the Great Prajnaparamita Sutra. Actually, among the 12 divisions, the prophecy scriptures, self-inspired utterances, and Vaipulya, these three are unique to the Mahayana. The other 9 divisions are also called the 9 divisions in the Hinayana. Then Adbhuta Dharma, the unprecedented or marvelous. In these sutras, the Buddha may emit light, or there may be great earthquakes, or various kinds of miraculous displays. When such extraordinarily rare events occur, these sutras are called the unprecedented scriptures, and the last one is called Upadesha, or discourse. The Buddha, with his disciples or other beings to be tamed, engages in question and answer format. In some of the Buddha's sutras, it's all in question and answer form, or appears as debate, as dialogue and response. This is called the discourse scripture. So altogether, there are 12 divisions of teachings in Tibetan. Namo to Upadesha, Namo to Adbhuta Dharma, like this. Each division has its homage, but actually we know that for each Dharma teaching, since we've paid homage to every Buddha, we should also pay homage to each division of scripture. All the great treasuries and the paramitas, all of these we should. In Tibetan, it says, pay homage to all the treasuries of Mahayana Dharma. The meaning of this phrase is, all the great treasuries and the paramitas means Namo to all the treasuries of Mahayana Dharma. We should pay homage to all the treasuries of Mahayana Dharma. This meaning is also acceptable. Next, we'll discuss the merit of this. If a person hears these 12 divisions of teachings and the paramitas, actually the 12 divisions and the paramitas mainly discuss emptiness, and the 12 divisions of teachings are, as we just explained, most of the 12 divisions are categories based on style. There are prose sections, there are verses, there are causation teachings, and those that teach Mahayana, emptiness, and so forth, various different categories. The 84,000 Dharma teachings, or the scriptures from the 3 turnings of the Dharma wheel, if we summarize them all, they can be included in the 12 divisions of teachings. And if we further condense the 12 divisions, then we have the 3 baskets. The 3 baskets and 12 divisions. Actually, the 3 baskets extend into the 12 divisions. And if the 12 divisions extend further, we have the 84,000 Dharma aggregates. The Abhidharma Kosha also frequently mentions, some say 84,000, some say 80,000 Dharma aggregates. If one hears the names of these 12 divisions of teachings and then praises them, recites them, and pays homage to them, and also generates faith in them, receives and upholds them. Uphold means because here there are different terms. Praise, recite, pay homage, have faith, receive, and uphold. Receive and uphold can be understood as receive means we accept it, possibly receiving it through various methods, including accepting the Dharma text itself, accepting through listening, accepting through recitation. In many ways you need to receive it. And uphold means keeping it on your person, carrying it with you, or regularly copying it. Actually, uphold includes many aspects, always keeping it without forgetting. If you do this, this person will not fall into the suffering of hell for 200,000 eons, and will also attain the wisdom of past life recollection. So today, what should we pay homage to? We should pay homage to the 12 divisions of teachings. Here it mentions that for 200,000 eons. Yesterday I was looking at the Tibetan text from earlier, and there's one, I'm not sure. Some people say we recited it, some say we didn't. One is Puming Buddha, one is Puxiang Buddha, and one is Puguang Buddha. But this Puxiang Buddha I couldn't find clearly in other scriptures. It's very obvious, so I didn't explain it that day. And one more thing, yesterday when I was reciting the verses, was there one that said, this person will not fall into hell for 400,000 eons? And below there's another line that says, not born in evil countries, not seeing evil kings for 400 million eons will not fall into the suffering of hell. In this verse, 400 million eons. Did I make a slight mistake yesterday when reciting? If there was a slip of the tongue, you can correct it later. Today here it says, for 200,000 eons. Because when I read Chinese, I only started learning Pinyin at 16. So sometimes having some slips of the tongue should be normal. When you read Tibetan, you probably make even more mistakes than me. Sometimes when you read Tibetan, I can't understand at all what you're saying. I listen very carefully, but sometimes I don't know. I wonder if it's Russian or maybe Spanish. It sounds completely incomprehensible. But relatively speaking, I think I'm still okay. And when we were in elementary school, there were some so-called substitute teachers. These substitute teachers weren't real teachers. Back then, those who taught us Chinese were all not real teachers. Now for themselves, basically none are in teaching positions. At that time, they also hadn't entered into real teaching positions. Our school back then was very, very poor. In elementary school, it was all like this. And we only studied for a year or two. It was all like this. We never heard any standard Mandarin sounds. After middle school, basically, I was already over 20 years old. After that, I was close to turning 20. At that time, I started. At that time, we had a Chinese teacher who was relatively good in middle school. Then when attending teachers college, there was a teacher Zhang who taught us Pinyin. Starting from that time, when we reached teachers college, we started learning about first tone, second tone. Before that, I had never heard of it. In elementary school, I never heard of it either. In middle school, I also never heard of it. Not until I got to Ganzi, this is first tone, second tone. Up until now, I still can't distinguish them clearly. I feel like they're all the same. I think they're all the same. So when I sometimes make mistakes in pronunciation, you should be understanding. If from childhood I had been like you, starting from age 5 or 6, not herding yaks but studying every day, maybe I'd be a little bit better than now. But it's hard to say, a foolish person will be foolish no matter what. We Tibetans have a saying, no matter how much you pull on a wooden stick, it won't get longer. So maybe it just won't get longer. Namo to the Buddha of 20,000 light marks and majestic adornment king. I didn't pronounce the word king, did I? In the Tibetan, I did pronounce it. It's fine. If there are some individual words I didn't pronounce well, in the Tibetan, I've already recited them all. It should be fine. 200,000 eons before it was 800,000 eons, then 600,000 eons, then 400,000 eons. Here it's 200,000 eons. Is this because of the Buddha jewel and Dharma jewel? As for the Dharma jewel, some scriptures say the Dharma jewel is even more important than the Buddha jewel. For example, in our Buddha halls, generally the Dharma jewel is placed on top and the Buddha jewel is in the middle. When placing scriptures, the scriptures go on top. There's also this custom. But here, why is it that when reciting the Dharma jewel, it only eliminates 200,000 eons? The reason for this is that actually the Buddha jewel truly possesses the qualities of abandonment and realization. In our Uttara Tantra, regarding the three jewels, ultimately it's the Buddha jewel. The ultimate refuge is the Buddha jewel. For this reason, we can explain it this way. Or alternatively, our 12 divisions of teachings are actually only a portion of the Tathagata's mind stream. I believe in the Ratnaketu Sutra, there's a similar principle. The meaning is that right now, these 12 divisions of teachings were later accumulated by some bodhisattvas and shravakas through the dharan of non-forgetting. The Buddha's name represents all the three kayas of all Buddhas. As for the three kayas of the Buddha, right now these 12 divisions of teachings are only a portion of the Buddha's wisdom. So even if we pay homage to all 12 divisions of teachings, actually we still cannot fully represent the Buddha because the Buddha's inexhaustible and boundless qualities far exceed this small portion of the Dharma jewel. I think we can analyze this from two perspectives, both of which have profound meaning. In this way, we first discuss how the merit of the Buddha jewel is great, then how the merit of the Dharma jewel is great. If we pay homage to the Dharma jewel, we will not fall into the suffering of hell for 200,000 eons and even attain past life recollection and so forth. It's okay if we don't attain past life recollection, but it's best not to fall into hell. Sometimes the karma we create is still quite frightening, so if we don't fall into hell, that's already excellent. When the names of the 12 divisions of teachings were spoken, 85,000 bodhisattvas attained the Vajra Samadhi, the meaning of Vajra concentration. Then 1 billion Shravakas generated the Mahayana Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi mind. They generated bodhicitta. They generated bodhicitta. In Tibetan, 1 billion is 10 times 100,000. Then 10,000 monks and nuns attained the path of arhatship. The first time before it was monks, below it's nuns. Now here, both monks and nuns attained arhatship. Countless devas and humans attained the pure Dharma I. Above, we've discussed what? We've discussed the Dharma jewel among the three jewels. We should pay homage, and not only pay homage, we should also study and practice it. This is truly very important. I think I've mentioned this twice already. Each Dharma friend here, no matter what happens in the future, must have your own Dharma that you regularly practice and study. In general terms, we should study everything. Both Sutra and Tantra, we can study it all. The teachings of all schools should be studied, but among them, just like when we choose a yidam among so many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, when you want to recite your Yidam's mantra, you need to choose one. Manjushra Bodhisattva, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, or whichever Buddha. You need to choose for your whole life. Actually, there are so many spiritual teachers, but you probably have one or two root gurus. You choose like this, same principle. Even more importantly, among the Dharma we practice, we must choose something. Choose one important Dharma teaching. This can be a sutra or a treatise, like the Lotus Sutra, which has especially great merit. The other day I mentioned someone. There was a lama in our monastery, yes, a lama named Ngodro. His practice wasn't particularly diligent usually, not especially diligent before, but he recited almost every day. I only recently found out he recited the Lotus Sutra. I said, that's remarkable. He already passed away long ago. When he was alive, I had no idea. He seemed like an ordinary lama, but he practiced the Lotus Sutra his whole life. When we taught the Lotus Sutra, I thought there were especially many Han Chinese practicing the Lotus Sutra. Tibetans, not necessarily so many. So among everyone here, you can choose for yourselves. I can't require today. that you must practice the Sutra of Great Liberation for life or the Vimalakirti Sutra for life. That's impossible to say. But truly, on one hand, you should have received the transmission and have great confidence in this Dharma practice. Such a teaching, whether it's a treatise like the words of my prefect teacher or our luminous essence. I used to know a Han Chinese Dharma master who truly spent basically over 10 years, nearly 20 years, reading the luminous essence every day. This was told to me by other disciples. Later I checked. I deliberately asked him, "I heard you often like to read the luminous essence. Is that right?" He said, "Yes. Let me have a look." Actually, I wanted to investigate whether it was true. I said, "Let me see your Dharma text." He showed me our earliest translated luminous essence. Truly, many parts were already worn through. At that point, I had no more doubts. Yes, he definitely practices it every day. Some of us have Dharma teachings we practice for life. Some people study this today, that tomorrow, what's now called /youth, investing for a while, live streaming for a while, doing this project for a bit, that project for a bit. Actually, this is relatively safe, I suppose, touching a bit here, a bit there, doing a little of everything. But if you succeed at nothing, that won't work either. You must have 1 or 2 teachings to study for life. Ideally, each of us should make this aspiration. You can voice this aspiration before spiritual teachers. I will study for life the Sutra of Great Liberation, for example. No matter where I go, this teaching I will. Or for those who've received tantric empowerment, whether it's the Lama Yangtig or the Amitabha Sutra. A couple years ago, we very successfully taught Kumarajva's translations of the Lotus Sutra and Vimalakirti Sutra. I personally think that in today's degenerate age, to complete them, beginning to end, is especially difficult. At that time, for a period, everyone, including 1 or 2 of our sutras, their study sessions were completely finished. But what the future holds, we don't know. Perhaps it will be even more convenient, who knows. Regardless, if a person in their lifetime obtains 1 or 2 teachings, I think you should take them seriously. I'm like this. The teachings I received from His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok, I basically keep them all together separately. I think for my whole life, they're still very meaningful. I myself have devoted my youth, my time, my years, all of it to these teachings, very meaningful. When teaching them, the lineage was never broken. In my life, of all things, this wealth of wisdom is most meaningful. That's my personal view. So I think for us Dharma friends here, regardless, wherever you're born, you should be a Mahayana Buddhist. Don't be like what I just described, doing this today, that tomorrow, constantly testing things out. In the end, you gain nothing. Such a person isn't necessarily very meaningful. The great masters of the past were all like this. Your time studying the Dharma needn't be very long, but truly the efficiency is very high, and for life the transformation it brings you, true confidence that cannot be shaken. Some sharp-facultied people with past connections or those with great faith in this life gain especially great benefit. Some may not be like this. They may not necessarily obtain especially great transformation. Of course, this is individual. Faculties differ, karmic connections differ, and possibly the spiritual teachers you rely on have different blessing powers as well. Some spiritual teachers are truly extremely proficient in theory. Some spiritual teachers possess this kind of mind transmission, extremely supreme blessing power. Some spiritual teachers have a kind of power where their wisdom and compassion directly plant themselves in your mind stream, forcefully planting themselves in your mind stream. There are also such cases. Some, though, the teacher is especially remarkable, but you yourself may not be so because of heavy wrong views, laziness, indolence. For these reasons, you don't seize the opportunity. Some people may have a teacher who, they themselves are very capable, especially excellent, but the teacher they encounter isn't so great. Due to various karmic conditions, their mind stream is also not transformed. So I think receiving the Dharma is also very important, but even more important is that after receiving it, you transform your mind stream. You should for your whole life. Whether in the future there's study together or not, Whenever you've received the Dharma, the great siddhas of India in the past, including Saraha and Shavari, these great siddhas, at first they went to rely on spiritual teachers. Later on, they all went to solitary places to practice themselves. When practicing themselves, it's all self-reliant. I once posted on Weibo saying, when parents are alive, you should be able to take care of yourself in daily life. When spiritual teachers are alive, what should you learn? Self-reliance in practice. Otherwise, when your parents pass away, if you need to learn elsewhere, now there may be many technical schools. If you don't know how to cook, you can pay some money and learn at a technical college, but mostly it won't be as intimate and direct as what parents teach. We should still learn the Dharma. The Dharma we discussed earlier, the Dharma is extremely important. I mentioned this yesterday too. Truly, when we study the Dharma, comparatively speaking, in the snowland, there truly is a very good systematic study tradition. Moreover, this tradition hasn't been harmed in the slightest. Up until now, it's especially flourishing, one can say this. In another 10 years, another 20 years, 100 years from now, what it will be like is hard to say. Perhaps looking at the state of the entire world, it may gradually decline in the future. There's this possibility, because looking at many civilizations throughout our entire world, especially excellent civilizations, slowly begin to decline, various kinds. Especially now, some of our values around money are continuously rising. Before, in every era, there were especially remarkable great people. What great people? Philosophers, scientists, Buddhist scholars, translators, especially remarkable. And they weren't elevated through publicity. It should be genuinely that they possess superhuman merit and wisdom within. So in every era, almost everywhere, east, west, south, north, there were especially remarkable wisdom giants. But from the last century to now, sometimes it really seems like, yes, there are some, but basically everyone is the same. What's the reason for this? Perhaps now the temptations are especially strong, or perhaps now many people say business opportunities now are very good. Many people quickly monetize their wisdom into fame, into wealth, into money, into houses, into cars, and are unwilling to devote themselves long-term to dedicated research. For this reason, like in our Tibetan areas too, in every era, there was a group of especially remarkable great philosophers and Buddhist scholars. But from the last century until now, in the 1980s, in Tibetan area, there was still a group of relatively older scholars. Later, like His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok and his generation, they were also very remarkable. But gradually coming down. Will it continue like this in the future? If it continues like this in the future, truly among all Tibetan scholars, we may not match previous generations, although now there are various famous people, but some, I don't know. Can they leave behind for human society true spiritual treasures? This isn't especially clear. Looking at other ethnic groups, it's almost all the same. In the last century, no matter which university, in many countries, there were still very remarkable scholars appearing. But now, I don't know how it is. Perhaps now in economic society, with the internet age and the explosion of various knowledge, those who truly devote themselves to research or focus single-mindedly on scholarship, such people aren't very many. I asked some professors in Western universities. At first, they very seriously pursued academics. After doing it for a while, their colleagues next to them were all making big money. Their own research could immediately be monetized, immediately turned into all sorts of things. People all have a tendency to compare. At this point, some feel uncomfortable and start changing their minds. So now our era also has some differences. Everyone can also observe this. Regardless, everyone should still diligently study and read. Nowadays, people increasingly dislike reading. I have this feeling, each generation worse than the last. People who truly read, who truly love learning, seem fewer and fewer. Although people looking at phones are more and more, there may be some books in there, but much of it is fragmented culture, the overall quality of humanity, our character. I don't know if it will be like this, because people don't love learning, blindly pursuing money and romance, especially now so-called entertainment activities. Now when some wise people write books, like in our Tibetan areas now, a few days ago, some Khenpos at our institute wrote books on the different 5 great treatises. But perhaps there's a celebrity who sings a song. that becomes more famous. Sometimes I think these values, people's values, are continuously changing. And changing into what? Becoming more and more superficial, quite surface level. Of course, does humanity need song and dance, arts? Do we need these? Certainly we need them. These are also very noble spiritual needs. But our emphasis on higher wisdom, for example, if someone sings a song, most people say, wow, they sing so well, can I see them? And so on. But if someone writes an especially good book, it's like, whatever, no big deal. What does this show? It shows a phenomenon in our society. Whether we value wisdom or not, it signals this kind of situation. One can say it this way. So from the Dharma jewel, I've extracted this wisdom. So regarding the Buddha's 12 divisions of teachings, I don't know how we value them. Everyone should think carefully about this. Namo to the 10 directions. Don't use the two words immeasurable. They added it later. All the great bodhisattvas. Namo to Manjushra Bodhisattva. Everyone knows in the Garland of Jewels, the 8 great bodhisattvas, Manjushra Bodhisattva section is the longest, the most extensive. Namo to Manjushra Bodhisattva. There's Master Jizang's commentary on the Lotus Sutra. In the commentary on the Lotus Sutra, many bodhisattvas we're discussing today are in there, and there are explanations for each bodhisattva. Master Jizang's work. Here it says Manjushra means wonderful virtue. His merit is complete, so he's called Manjushra Bodhisattva. He's also foremost in wisdom. Namo to Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. In our Universal Gateway chapter, it's also explained that he constantly observes sounds of suffering and saving and personally rescues these beings. So when we encounter suffering, if you don't dare recite Avalokiteshvara loudly, softly say Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. Please bless me. May my body be a bit better, my mood a bit better. If you make a sound like this, Avalokiteshvara will bless you. Because Avalokiteshvara, observing the sounds of the world, Avalokiteshvara, explained this way. It should be in the Universal Gateway chapter. You can check when the time comes. Namo to Mahastama Prapta Bodhisattva. Earlier we had Manjushra Bodhisattva's wisdom, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva's compassion. Mahastama Prapta Bodhisattva represents power, his capacity. In our Vajrayana, it's Vajrapani Bodhisattva. In Tibetan area, we often speak of the 3 protectors. Mahastama Prapta Bodhisattva, no matter who prays, he forcefully enables these beings to obtain all their wishes. Or beings in the 3 lower realms. If Mahastama Prapta Bodhisattva goes there, these beings in the 3 lower realms will immediately be pacified and obtain happiness. Namo to Nityodhyukta Bodhisattva. Also in the commentary on the Lotus Sutra, it says, beings have various sufferings, and Nityodhyukta Bodhisattva constantly practices diligence to remove their suffering, benefiting self and others. Nityodhyukta Bodhisattva, we all very much want to become constant diligence Bodhisattva, never rest Bodhisattva. I hope many Dharma friends will all become constant diligence bodhisattvas, not temporary diligence bodhisattvas, diligent for a day or two, especially diligent during exam period, then after exams, not looking at any books. If the Dharma teacher is a bit strict, the teacher says, today I'm going to check. Okay, I'll look. If the teachers don't say anything, then you don't look. Actually, this isn't good. We should practice constant diligence. As for diligence, I myself, I don't know, I'm still okay, I guess. Sometimes myself, no matter where I go, I still have a bit of this aspect. I dare not say especially diligent, but also not especially lazy. Especially I like reading. For myself, one thing is liking to read, then liking to translate, liking to share with others. Everyone has their own hobbies. This is one hobby. Over 10 years ago, someone asked me, is it your altruistic mind? Altruistic mind may not count, but truly since childhood I've loved reading. When I didn't know how to read, looking at some sutras made me especially joyful. Is it a bit of habitual tendency continuing from past lives? So reading is perhaps connected to one's aspirations. Before, at our institute, there was a lama I knew, a lama, quite thin, whose speaking voice was especially low. Generally, for important matters, you'd have to get close to him to hear. But he said, if I don't read, I feel uncomfortable in my heart. Whenever I have a book to read, my heart is comfortable. Every time I don't have a book, even for a short time, I feel like I've lost something. Recently, he's not at the institute. A few days ago, I asked, Does he still like reading now? They said, still okay, but not like before, because recently his health isn't good. That's what they said. So among some of us, I see some who especially love reading. Some seem to not know. Perhaps from past lives they came from other pure lands or something. They don't really like reading. They often say themselves, I don't like reading. When I was young, I also didn't like reading. Teachers said I didn't read, parents said I didn't read, so I just won't read. Seems to feel quite great about themselves. But Sadaprarudita, we still very much like Sadaprarudita, not temporary diligence. Of course, this may require that one also has some, because many people in the world now are quite distracted now, not long-term lovers of reading. Actually, like here at Larung, for those who especially love reading and studying, it should be very good. When it's time to serve, you can serve, arrange service. Last night I also told the Dharma teachers, don't be overly strict in your requirements, but don't have no requirements at all either. Some teachers call this compassion. You don't need to read, that's fine. However you want to have fun is fine. However you want to be happy is fine. This probably won't work either. No pressure, no motivation. But some may also be too anxious themselves, and everyone keeps... Yesterday I told them too. Some of our Dharma friends, because they're too exhausted with great pressure, have already collapsed. I asked on how did they collapse? Because they get up at 4 in the morning and their regular work is also quite... Two people. First this person collapsed, then that person collapsed. I said, what's the main reason for collapsing? Because of the pressure. I said, let me analyze this pressure. Will I collapse? Then when I analyzed it, this can't be called pressure at all. It's just because there's no rest. I said, no rest? Looking at their work, they can rest any time. If you're just standing there, isn't that resting, you know? No rest is impossible. So now it's really a matter of mental strength. If one's mental strength is quite strong, even if you're working, it's all manageable. For example, if I have to deal with matters involving beings or have meetings about certain things, if my mental pressure is very negative, oh, another meeting, another so annoying, then indeed you might feel a bit, but if I think this is quite good, I'm resting while chatting. My teaching is also like this. Although sometimes it's a bit tiring, on one hand I feel this is a particularly good opportunity. So for us listening to teachings, it's also like this. Throughout many lifetimes, hearing even one Buddha's name is difficult. Now before a spiritual teacher with proper qualifications, the merit of listening to one class is so great. It's truly so meaningful. Thinking this way, all pressure has already disappeared. So sometimes the way people nowadays talk, they're not tired at all, yet say they're very, very tired. They sometimes often ask me, aren't you tired with so many things? I sometimes say, is this called being tired? This isn't called being tired. What is this? From many perspectives, our mental strength, it's best if we ourselves encounter things as perfectly normal. Whatever we encounter, even if you're locked in prison, it's nothing special. I've mentioned before that actually prison is a very good meditation environment. It's nothing special. If you're sick, it's also nothing special. Indeed, I feel sometimes it's a matter of mindset, which is still very important. In 2016, when I had surgery, when I woke up that morning, I thought, today I've never had a chance to practice generosity before. I told the people around me then, today I want to practice bodily generosity. I want to first properly generate the intention, although like the great masters of the past. Cutting a piece from my own body to give to others, others wouldn't want it and wouldn't eat my piece of flesh, but perhaps some non-humans to whom I've been indebted since beginningless time, perhaps those non-humans might need it. Today I must sustain this through dedication. Then I got up that morning and began silently making aspirations to myself. Today from my body, at that time they cut a piece from my kidney, I told them, I want to practice bodily generosity. You must all bless me well, because at that time it was 6 hours or so, from 8 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon. After this cutting was done, I still hadn't regained consciousness. Around 4 or 5 in the afternoon, I woke up. After waking up, I told them, add some tsampa and make some torma offerings. Then we recited some dedication prayers. When I was reciting then, I seemed a bit dazed, but I still had the intention. Before midnight, I must make the dedication. After this, I felt oh, today I truly practiced bodily generosity. Actually, I don't know if any non-humans ate it. I don't know either, but still I myself did something in the preparation, main practice and conclusion. Perhaps some people would be very frightened if we shift our thinking slightly. Something that originally doesn't seem good can be made into something one considers meaningful. Whether it's actually meaningful is hard to say, but if one considers it meaningful, I myself believe I indeed gave a piece of my flesh to beings as generosity. I also made dedications this way. I don't know if I've mentioned this before. Actually, with any matter we face, there may be some, both good and bad have their value. But the key is, can we receive its value? If it's something good but we don't receive its value, the good may perhaps become bad. Any matter in the world is like this. If I encounter something bad but we accept the good part from it, it will also become good. In daily life and in life generally, I feel this is very necessary. Just now we mentioned Sadaprarudita Bodhisattva and also Aniksiptadura Bodhisattva. This mainly refers to practice. In practice, one doesn't delay or prolong at all, never resting, just like some people whose heads are on fire and immediately seek rescue. Aniksiptadura Bodhisattva diligently practices continuously. No rest here doesn't mean not sleeping or eating. That's not the meaning. But unlike us, once we rest, we keep resting and can't get back on track. Some people are like this, not listening to teachings. They consider it a rest. After a while, they have no interest in listening at all. Moreover, for some people, listening and studying Dharma only lasts about 2 or 3 years at the beginning. What's the problem with many of us now? At first, not having encountered the Dharma, they listen earnestly for a period. Then after another period, having tasted part of the Dharma's flavor, because they don't continue deeply, they cannot persevere and finally break off in the middle, never willing to engage again. So sometimes looking at our audience members, those who truly continue for many years without interruption, very earnestly, there aren't particularly many such people. Then it mentions Ratnakuda Bodhisattva. Ratnakuda Bodhisattva, we say he has wealth in his hands. As stated in the Lotus Sutra commentary, having jewels in hand for material generosity, jewels in hand to give to beings, or we could say this bodhisattva possesses the dharma jewels of the transcendent. These dharma jewels, through the 6 paramitas and 4 means of attraction, are given to beings as dharma generosity. This is called Ratnakuda Bodhisattva. Then Bhaisajya Raja Bodhisattva. Bhaisajya Raja Bodhisattva was mentioned before. Bhaisajya Raja Bodhisattva will become Vimalanetra Tathagata in the future. He and his brother made vows in the past that whoever hears his name can be cured of illness, and so on. We've discussed this extensively. Bhaisajya Samudgata Bodhisattva, this bodhisattva was added later, so we won't use it. They felt that if there's medicine king, there should also be medicine superior, so they added it. It seems the Danhuang manuscripts and many others don't have it, and the Tibetan doesn't have it either. Viryanandin Bodhisattva and Varadatta Bodhisattva. This Viryanandin Bodhisattva, although it's in the Tibetan, it's probably actually Varadatta Bodhisattva. The Lotus Sutra commentary and the Danhuang manuscripts both have it. So the earlier Varyanandin Bodhisattva won't be used. This may also be considered an addition. So what about Varadatta Bodhisattva? The Lotus Sutra commentary and Danhuang have it. Although in Tibetan it seems to be Varyanandin Bodhisattva, we'll still use Varadatta Bodhisattva. Why is it called Varadatta? Because he's willing to renounce himself, courageously renouncing his body, life, and wealth. Very brave, not fragile, and able to benefit beings through generosity, thus called Varadatta Bodhisattva. The courage here doesn't mean being brave in battle or brave in quarreling. It should be courage in generosity. Otherwise, in human history, especially during wartime, whoever dares to fight is considered very brave. Brave and fearless, a hero, a heroic idealist. But this is worldly bravery. In Buddhism, true bravery is courage in practicing patience, courage in giving. This is called Varadatta Bodhisattva, Ratnakandra Bodhisattva. So for this Bodhisattva, which is in the the Lotus Sutra commentary says, the jewel moon of wisdom dispels the heat of the three poisons in beings. Because the moon is cool, it can dispel the heat of beings' three poisons. Namo Kandra Prabha Bodhisattva, the moonlight of wisdom dispels the darkness of ignorance. Also from the Lotus Sutra commentary, this Bodhisattva is explained this way, then Purnakandra Bodhisattva. The Lotus Sutra commentary says, no merit is incomplete, no illumination is not universal. His merits are all complete, and his illumination is universally pervasive. Also stated in the Lotus Sutra commentary, so Purnakandra Bodhisattva has perfectly complete merits like a full moon. With complete merits as a bodhisattva, certainly one won't not share. Unlike some wealthy people in today's society, many wealthy people in society now are absolutely unwilling to give. They monopolize all their wealth for themselves, no matter how many suffering. Poor people are nearby, they won't care at all. Some people do charity on the surface, but this charity is just to avoid taxes, to not have to pay taxes. So now in some countries, many have policies where doing charity exempts one from taxes. So doing charity is just like that. Actually, it's not giving with an altruistic mind. This should also be clearly understood. So if it were Purnakandra Bodhisattva, he wouldn't be like this. Purnakandra Bodhisattva would unconditionally share with beings whatever wealth or wisdom or everything he possesses. So in our society now, sometimes the wealth gap is large, and among humans there are many injustices. Ultimately, it's the selfish mind that's terrifying. Let me explain a few more bodhisattvas. Let me see how many more to explain. Mahavikramin Bodhisattva, he has great power. What power? The power to dispel the three poisons of greed, anger, and ignorance, or to dispel the selfish minds of the two vehicles. Such great power. Everyone knows about power. Some is physical strength, some is mental strength. Physical strength is also fine, running, competing, and so on. Physical strength is also acceptable, but I think more important is mental strength, the power of wisdom. This is more important. When some people encounter any situation, their mental strength is very strong. It's nothing to them. But some people encounter even a very, very small matter and immediately seem about to collapse. This is very pitiable. So in our Buddhism, through such study, contemplation, and practice, gradually one's intelligence improves. In Buddhism, we often speak of the 5 faculties and 5 powers. If these 5 powers are enhanced and not destroyed by adverse conditions, then practice and so on becomes especially easy. Especially if you have capability. It's not about being heroic or tough or saying, I must endure. It's not like that. If you truly realize signless emptiness, that power is far stronger than any other power. So in our learning process, whether it's Dzogchen or Chan Buddhisms, seeing one's nature, the luminous mind itself, then perhaps your power truly transcends everything. Or in our Madhyamaka teachings, the meaning of prajna, emptiness of the ultimate truth, then your power will truly be strong. Why do some great masters of the past, the same kind of person, but why is their capability so extraordinarily strong? Actually, this should be related to their inner realization. Once we truly have realization, then countless others cannot compare. Actually, Buddhism truly has such wonderful states. It depends on whether we can attain them, like a jewel island with all kinds of treasures. But when going there, some people might take fake treasures. Some people don't care at all and don't even look. But some people aim at the treasures they need, and finally, through their own diligent effort, truly obtain them. After this, your power becomes very great. So I think in our world, 2 people may be the same, but finally, including if you go to Tibetan area to seek the Dharma, or you go to Han Chinese regions to seek the Dharma, or seek the Dharma in the West elsewhere, 2 might go together, but in the end, perhaps only one truly obtains the Dharma. This Dharma doesn't mean carrying a few very heavy books. This year, for our Ksitigarbha group practice, we distributed very heavy ones. Those with weaker bodies can't even lift them. The other day I saw a nun whose body is thin and short, and that Dharma text was especially large. She couldn't even hold it. But obtaining the Dharma isn't necessarily external. Of course, external Dharma texts, these scripture volumes, are very meritorious. But more importantly, if the content within the scripture volumes is installed in our wisdom, then no matter what your appearance is like, what your wisdom is like, what your body is like none of it matters. So your power should be very great. This all depends on your faith and your diligence. Liberation depends on oneself. Let me explain two more bodhisattvas. Aparimitabala Bodhisattva, the Lotus Sutra commentary, says signless without characteristics. Signless should mean emptiness. The Lotus Sutra commentary mainly says because he has immeasurable power, or the power of emptiness. This bodhisattva is also very remarkable. I just mentioned emptiness. I think Master Jizang, when he explained the Vimalakirti Sutra and the Lotus Sutra, mainly explained emptiness very well. I believe Master Jizang must have realized emptiness. He seems to have been from Persia, Iranian. His parents fled enemies and came to Guangzhou, and later he was born in Nanjing. Actually, he was a foreigner. Later, he became very proficient in the scriptures and treatises of that time. Actually, he should be Iranian, not Han Chinese, but still, Jizang's work, I still really like some of his, because I've basically read all the commentaries on the Lotus Sutra and Vimalakirti Sutra. He's very remarkable. He's a patriarch of the three treatises school. He wrote commentaries on the 100 treatise, 12 Gates treatise, and Madhyamaka treatise. These three treatises all teach Madhyamaka emptiness. So I think some of his work, including when he explained scriptures, he used his own realization to explain these bodhisattvas' names. So I think he certainly had realization of emptiness. With realization of emptiness, the meaning of his explanations and general conceptual explanations are completely different. They have very profound meaning. Everyone should also know this. So earlier I used his method of explanation. Signless power refers to emptiness. Then there's one more, Trilokya Vikrantagamin Bodhisattva, transcending the three realms. Wisdom transcends the samsara of the three times. In the Lotus Sutra commentary, his wisdom has transcended all wisdom of the three realms, and moreover does not fall into the three realms. So this bodhisattva is also very remarkable. Actually, when we hear these bodhisattvas' names, in our mind streams we'll definitely receive blessings, receive siddhis and merit. This should be very meaningful. So when reciting, you should also think with sincere faith. In this degenerate age, encountering these bodhisattvas' names, I should consider myself very fortunate. Fortunate amidst misfortune. I've been reborn in such a degenerate age of 5 turbidities with various afflictions arising one after another in this world, but I still encounter these Mahayana wonderful dharmas and Mahayana scriptures, so I'm not the most pitiable. We should receive the dharma with such an attitude. This way it's very meaningful. I've been thinking this recently. Here at our place, it's autumn again, and enjoying the Mahayana dharma. Everything else is acceptable. Food, clothing, and so on. All these things, as long as we don't starve to death or freeze to death, as long as we can get by in samsara, it can't be that much better nor that much worse. We've also seen some particularly well-off people. Well, in the end, their outcome is just that. And if it's particularly bad, in the end, it's also just average, nothing special. So on one hand, I can say I've seen clearly the entire world's highest and lowest. If we know the highest and lowest, we'll have a sense of it in our hearts. If we don't know the highest, oh, having fame is the happiest, having wealth is the happiest. Keep going up and up, but if you keep going up, in the end, there's also a ceiling, just that. And as for the lowest, many of us worry and fear, but actually the lowest is also like that. Actually, it's not the most frightening. Samsara is also in such a state. Therefore, everyone, we should use our joyful minds, or this kind of fortunate mind, to receive the Mahayana Dharma. As long as we have Mahayana Dharma thought, everything else is optional. That's what I think. Of course, this may be a rather extreme view, because the education I've received for basically 30 years has been Mahayana Dharma thought education. So with some worldly concepts, there may be some slight conflicts, but such conflicts should also be allowed. In our world, the collision of various thoughts should be acceptable. We need an inclusive mind to accept them. That's all for today.
Om Bandhangara Banma Sodargye